The marriage referendum in the Republic, the Asher's Bakery case and abortion rights are some of the moral issues that have dominated debate this year. Some politicians have made it clear that their faith has informed their actions. That would be welcomed by many, but should faith influence policy making? And are non-religious voters represented in our assembly? Our reporter Andy West has spent the last few months investigating.
Politics and religion, each powerful in their own right, and in Northern Ireland far from distinct. For many MLAs, their faith offers meaningful and practical guidance.
I would pray before I have to make some very serious decision or some decision that affects some individual.
And how does that happen? I'm interested to know how, when you're praying, when you're asking God, what should I do? How does he tell you?
I think God will put things in your way, or he will perhaps prevent you from doing something. I'm not saying that you hear a voice, but you certainly feel guided.
Not all MLAs are quite so certain of their faith, though, and recent events have tested the line politicians draw between their political and spiritual lives.
I would describe myself as a struggling Christian. I think same-sex marriage is particularly challenging because on the one hand, I'm not homophobic, but as I stand, I cannot say to you that I can support same-sex marriage.
What if your constituents were saying to you, we want you to bring in this particular policy, but you felt it was against your faith? Don't you then have a democratic responsibility to go against your faith and go with your constituents?
I think it's very important for me to be consistent to the values that I hold, and on occasion that will mean I'm in tune with the majority of public opinion, and at times it means you'll be going against it.
Around 8 in 10 people here class themselves as religious in one way or another, and many would want the church reflected in their government. But what about those who aren't religious, or just not very religious? Do they have a voice in Stormont? Professor John Brewer spent much of his academic life researching religion in Northern Ireland.
In my personal view, ministers should keep their personal beliefs separate from their professional practice, because their professional practice is that they are ministers of everyone. We have to accept that in Northern Ireland there are people of no faith and people of different faiths.
So what about those of no faith? Are they represented by anyone at the Assembly? I contacted all 108 MLAs to ask them whether or not they were religious. Of those who replied, 62 said they were. But 7 said they didn't believe in God. And all of them asked to remain anonymous. Well, all but one. Anna Lowe of the Alliance Party.
Yeah, fine.
And even this interview took weeks of negotiations with her party.
Well, I'm here now, so I think I'm quite happy to talk to you now.
You are here now, and I appreciate you talking to us. We should say, first of all, you are not religious.
No, I'm not religious. I don't have a faith. I was never brought up in any faith.
I've been speaking to other MLAs who are also not religious. You're the only one who's agreed to talk to us about it publicly. Does that surprise you, and why do you think that is?
It doesn't surprise me. I think in Northern Ireland, so many of our politicians, if you like, use their faith as almost as a attraction for voters. So no, I'm not surprised at all.
So you think that some MLAs would be afraid that if they said, I don't believe in God, they would lose votes?
Yeah. What I want to see is policy making is based on evidence. Scientific evidence, medical evidence, social science evidence, not on the Bible.
And that opinion isn't exclusive to non-religious politicians. John Dallett, MLA, is certainly a man of faith, but
I would tend to leave it at the door and depend on my judgment as a person, whether something is right or wrong. You know, and I think that's something that people with no faith and no religion have to do every day anyway.
The former priest and public figure Dennis Bradley doesn't think faith should be left at the door, though he is worried by the thought that some MLAs might be afraid to say they're not religious.
Truthfulness is a mark of good religion. It's also a mark of good politics. And I think it's disappointing if we have a whole group of politicians, or a small even group of politicians across the parties or within parties, who don't feel free either because they think that there is a religious monster out there somewhere that eats you up, eats your votes up, if you're honest.
Certainly the politicians I've spoken to for this report have been very honest about their deeply personal beliefs. But the question still remains for me: will those who don't believe in God ever feel able to speak as openly about it as those who do? Andy West, BBC Newsline.